Welcome to the BigMx Radio podcast. This podcast will also be available on Vurbmoto.com. I am your host, Brad Gebhart. With me on the line, none other than Canadian motocross legend Carl Vaillancout. Carl, it's been a long time coming for me to have you on the podcast. This will also be available on YouTube, but pleasure to make your acquaintance, my friend. We are far apart as far as distance right now, but through the magic of the internet, we are now talking about your illustrious career.
Hi, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. And I also want to thank Bruce Willis from KTM Canada, who I think there hasn't been a week that's gone by over the last little while that he hasn't said, hey, where's my Carl Vaillancourt podcast? So, yeah, we can thank him for berating me that I haven't yet had you on. That can now go to rest. Bruce, I hope you enjoy this episode. And yeah, like he sent me a picture of your KTM. I think it's either a two-stroke or a four-stroke sitting in the shop there. So
Yeah, the 302 stroke, exactly.
beautiful. Well, I'm a two-stroke guy as well. I'm still running the carbureted bike from 2016, but it might be time to upgrade. How much riding do you get to do nowadays? You're a few years past your pro career, but sounds like you're probably still faster than I am today.
Actually, the 300 you saw, sorry, from Bruce at KTM is the two-stroke I did return because I busted my shoulder a few weeks ago. I chipped in my humerus bone, and I just said, that one day I fell. I cut my, I think I hit a sprinkler on the side of the track. The last track I rode, just cut my arm, and I lost control, fell on the shoulder. And as soon as I got up, I saw the elbow bleeding, and I'm like, damn, I just had enough. I mean, as much as I like riding, I love it. I said, hell with it. So I went back to the truck. I taped my elbow up to go to the hospital and get it stitched. And when I got to the hospital, my arm was hurting, but not that much. And doctor said, we'll get an x-ray. And, I could feel the collarbone was good, shoulder blade, everything. And I was moving it. And it came out with a chip, small chip. It was move 11 millimeter. And I had to get surgery. So
Wow.
I got a plate and 5 screws. It's been like 6 weeks. So I ride bicycle now. I always did, but I can ride my bicycle. But I said, hell with it, I'm done. So I turned back the bike to KTM Canada. I said, I'm done. I'm not riding again. As much as I
Done.
love it. Done.
We're
I mean,
done.
I'm done. Even when I rode here and there after I got done from my career. It was 27 years from 28 now to 1995. And I crashed, a few times, cut your elbows here and there. But I crashed last fall, broke some ribs and punctured my lung. And I came back from that like 8 weeks after. I was fine. It was on October 15th. And my son, had a competition. We'll talk about it later, like you said. And I was fine. 8 weeks later, I flew to Europe to see my son. I'm like, hey, I'm fine. I'm healthy. And my wife, she let me re-road. I mean, she never held me back. But she said, I don't want you hurt. And I said, no, I'm just riding, to not wide open, but to a certain level where I can be comfortable without crashing. But came February, I was feeling really good. And I said, I want to ride again. I saw the 302 stroke, and apparently it was the big deal. I was a 350 guy. I mean, don't give me that 350 four-stroke is the thing. But I said I'm going to ride a 302 stroke. So I got to ride a little bit, and I had this stupid little crash. It was out of a turn right, and not going fast, but the results is the same. And my wife was like, she had enough, but I had enough myself. And she said, I hope you quit. I said, I am done. So I am really done now. I'll be 54 in a few weeks. So I said, hell with it. I love it though. But
Yeah. Well, happy early birthday. It saddens me to hear that your days of throttle therapy may be done, but it sounds like you've got a lot of other adrenaline pumping activities and hobbies that will keep you going, including skiing, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. But
yeah,
um, like your professional career ended essentially 1995. How long after that, like, I guess like the year after that, couple years after that, like, and obviously when you're not training and riding and doing it professionally, everybody sort of loses that, like, that razor's edge right off the hop. But you're probably quite quick for quite some time, leading into like the late 90s, early 2000s, where you could probably still get around a dirt bike track pretty good.
I thought I did. I remember Dave Gallen. He was my mechanic
Yes, sir.
the last in '92 and '93, and I retired in 1995. He came back. I'm not sure how many years after, maybe 3 or 4 years. He had that big Yamaha rig. He hired
Yes.
Doug Duba, and that one year is like, I'll get you a bike. And I was riding here and there, and I felt like pretty good. And it wasn't that long after I retired. I was still in shape. I went and ride here and there, and I still got a bike, but you don't last that long. You get the famous arm pump, but I felt pretty good actually. The next 2 3 years, I you got it inside of you. Said like, I'm not going to come back, but I could come back. What about if I would come back? It takes, I'm sure everybody goes through that phase, and I did like maybe 2 3 years. And when Dave came around to do the Canadian tour, he bugged me, but I wouldn't have rode. But I thought because I retired, I was 26, so I think I could
Young
have been
guy.
competitive easily until I was 30. But I was going to college, and I was working in the business, and there's just like no turning back. But I felt pretty good, and then I stopped for like a few years, and then I started running much more. Maybe when I turned 49. I don't know. I saw the big 50 coming. I had a friend that took me out to a trip in Costa Rica, and
Okay.
he said we rode those big 540 Husaberg trail riding,
Yeah.
and I really got the hitch then. And I said to my wife, I said, I want to ride again. I'd like to ride like the Get F1 new motocross bike. So I started riding again, like full on, like 2018 and 19, 20, 21. I rode like a lot. I mean, not as much as a pro guy, but I rode quite a bit. So until a few weeks ago.
Fair enough. So it sounds like that's in the rearview mirror. But what have you been doing late? Like, what do you do for work nowadays?
We have a family business. We manufacture windows and door for residential, light commercial
Oh, right
market
on.
in Quebec. So we keep busy. I'd say we're doing pretty good. So that as soon as I got done with the racing, I wanted to get the business degree in finance at college, and that was tough. Right after racing, I didn't feel like being in school like all the time while you know all my friends and the fun time was racing. But everything has to come to an end. So met my wife Karine. We had our first kid, Elliot, in 1999, and then Sandrine was born in 2001. So school, work, family. That's what I did, and that's what I still do today. Still in the business and still work like crazy. So I must like it.
Fair enough. Well, hats off to you for making that transition. Not an easy transition whatsoever. The life of a student, a whole heck of a lot different than life as a professional motocross racer, traveling all over the globe and focusing on training. And obviously, it's something that you love to do. And you were great at it. A Canadian champion, someone who won championships over Alan Dick as well as Ross Rollerball Peterson. And just throughout a time where Canadian motocross was like maybe at one of its peaks. I think it also peaked again in the 2000s when they had a lot of talent coming in through there. But you were certainly part of a really iconic era, and you were successful during it. So yeah, like I'm excited to sort of comb through some things with you today, and yeah, like I think shades of when Dave Gallen was trying to get you to come out on a four stroke or I don't know what kind of bike it was in the late 90s. A similar conversation was probably had with Kevin Benoit earlier this year. The difference is he took the bait. What are your thoughts on Kevin coming back? I feel bad that he's had some bad luck as of late, but the guy can still go pretty fast.
I know he was hurt. Saw he was hurt shoulder like last week.
Shoulder injury, yeah.
He's all taped up for the weekend. Is he okay? Actually, I don't know. I follow his social media, but I don't know if he's getting better or if he's okay now. But yeah, he's not getting any younger. It's pretty impressive what he did. Coming back with all those crazy kids, full of adrenaline. He's still in his. I think he's 34 now,
Yeah.
or something, Kevin. So he did pretty good. I mean, he started winning. So even myself, I was like, I didn't know where he was going to be. So pretty impressive. But I mean, hats off to him. But I didn't. I don't regret it. There's certain time in your life, when you're racing, you're really self-centered. Everything's all about you, and you have to turn the page. I mean, everybody that's racing now. I mean, when you hit the next chapter, it can be hard. I mean, you have to be prepared for it, and it's not something if you do it too quick and you have nothing ahead of you. It could be grueling for some of these guys. So it's a tough things to do. But I did it. Went back to school. I didn't like to be student like you. You mentioned it's not as cool, but today it was by far the best thing I ever did. I mean, is it great that I raced? But best thing I did, move on. I was fairly young compared to some of the other guys that retired, but something I wanted to do, and I'm glad I did it.
Beautiful. Well, very well said. And yeah, I think, yeah, Kevin is currently scratching that itch. Whether he regrets it or not is yet to be told. But hats off to him. I think his first race ever as a pro was back in 2003, and Ryder McNabb wasn't born at the time. So there, that kind of it puts into perspective just how young some of his competitors are. But hats off to him for riding out there with the kids.
I mean, I don't know all these new kids. I saw Ryder this year a few times, and like I said, just for Kevin to hang out with all these kids is just quite something. I don't know much about him. I saw him, he raced in Texas, and he did that future race in Buchanan. So I think from what I saw, kid's got a nice future. Maybe he'll go ahead and jump to the U.S. We'd like to see another Canadian do that. Last one was sort of maybe JSR did it quite a bit, but it seems like after JSR retired, I don't know. I do ask some of the riders why they don't race that much in the U.S. I've heard different stories from insurance or contract, but I think the Canadian riders would gain to race the higher level of American motocross and supercross. And I hope, I mean, I heard Dylan was going to go do the last few nationals in the States. So I hope we see some more Canadian on the US circuit. Definitely.
Certainly. I see a lot of similarities of like Canadians jumping up to the American racing, very similar to there's a lot of guys who are successful in the 250 class, but they're reluctant to jump to the 450 class, whether it's in the Canada or in the States, is like they think to themselves, like, all right, I'm this good. How good will I be when I move up to that next level? And if you're not going to be happy with that level, you don't think you're going to be able to make money at that level. And I think even for guys who saw like JSR with the success that he did have in the States, he's an all-timer as far as Canadian motocross is considered. So if they don't think that they're on his level whatsoever, they're probably thinking to themselves, well, if JSR only had X amount of success, what would I hope to achieve? And if that discourages them, the result of that is sort of what we have is not a lot of guys who take the chance to go down there and bet on themselves.
You can start the year there. I mean, do the Supercross. Not that we have a good or big Supercross series, but for the outdoor, I mean, they could race. I used to tell some of the riders here in Quebec, go to New England, go race with Chris Canning. A lot of these guys that people don't know, they do 20-minute plus 2 laps motos, and there's a lot of fast local. I was Canadian champion. I would get spanked a lot of time. There's Dowd and Doug Henry. You'll say it. They're fast, but you have to be able to put it on the line. And it doesn't matter if you want to race in the States full on, you got to go try it out in the winter. So it doesn't affect your Canadian series. You're only going to gain racing with a better crowd, better racer, faster guys. Here in Canada, there's only not too many guys that were on our level. I mean, Ross, JSR, me, you mentioned Al Dick. I mean, when I was there, 88, 89, you had Doug Hoover. I can name a lot of guys, but as my career went along, there wasn't that many that could be up front. And I think you should gain from going to the US, just better level. And maybe some of these guys, think they're not going to make money doing it, but race there in the winter, in the off season. And if ever you get a contract, I mean, I'd say go for it. If not, well, go spend your winter there and race New England here. That's not too far for the Quebec guys. And come the Canadian season, I mean, you'll be more than ready. But
Certainly.
even if you hang out at Club MX and all these nice places in the winter, but you don't race, there's practicing, and racing is a whole different story. I think you need to race more with better guys instead of just practicing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you weren't shy about that whatsoever. Canadian motocross has always been more of a condensed schedule as far as fitting it more into the summer months. Of course, our riding season's a lot shorter. It was not uncommon to see you race East Coast 125 Supercross as well, which you were able to, that was some of your best results as a pro. And then I think your best national, I believe it was 1990 Gatorback. What do you remember about that ninth place finish?
Yeah, the 7-1 moto, and I think was it 11th, 7-10 or 7-11 for ninth overall. Actually, it was really good. I felt really really good, and I did a seventh once in a national 92 Budds Creek on the 500. So I did a few top 10, not enough, but I didn't race whole summer and the whole series. I wish I would have raced more, but the Canadian budget I had, I would use half of it to go in the States. And I know the Canadian people that would sponsor me understood, but a lot of them are like, hey, you're wasting all their budget. But, I would tell them, well, I am there, and this guy is there. And if we want to get better, we have to be there. Even if I kill all my parts budget there, I'm going to come here ready. But if I sit here all winter and ride around, do circle at, a little track, I'm not going to be ready. So some of them understood and others not so much. But for me, it was not an option. I had to go there to get better.
I love it, man. Well, you had a great career against some amazing competitors. Of the guys that you competed with most closely, that are most sort of notable, Ross Rollerball Peterson, and I also mentioned Al Dick. Which of those two was maybe the most fierce competitor? A guy that, like, if they were right in front of you or right behind you, that you were most worried about?
Wow, Ross. Ross was really strong competitor. Like physically, he was strong, and you know we would do 30 plus 2, and you wouldn't really outlast this guy. You had to be strong until the last lap. And there was a time, I don't know, I haven't talked to other people that race with him, that compete with him, but I didn't like him. He didn't like me, and we want to run each other over. And, we center punch each other quite a few times. I remember the last time was 93 in BC on the island. He smashed me at the end of the moto, like pretty bad. And at that right moment, I had just stick my leg out. And I figured, if I would have just had my foot on the peg, he could have broke my leg. So it got a little crazy at time. But if you're asking me about fierce, well, Ross was fierce. The thing about Ross, he was all power. I don't think I did bug him a few times. I said, I hope they put more jumps, because he couldn't really jump that well.
Okay.
But then again, he wouldn't jump that well. He always has the front end really high and case stuff. And I'm like, I looked at him and I'm like, but then again, he did good. He manhandled the bike on the track, but he wasn't all finesse. On outdoor track, on hard pack, he was really good on hard pack. I mean, he would stand up to stuff, and I was more of a sand guy that was looking for a burn. So technically, on an outdoor track on hard pack, he was really really good. Ross was good. Al was actually Mr. Whole Shot all the time and go fast, like half the moto, and he wasn't as strong, I think. And in motos, I could maybe catch him. So He was a great rider technically, but not as strong physically as Ross. And I remember Hoover. Hoover was an animal. Uh, when I came through the ranks, he was on top. I was like more top 10, so I didn't really race with him. And the last year, in 1990, he retired. So I wish I would have raced him more, but he was an animal. Let me think. I learned a lot from Zoldi Barini. I used to race with Zoldi Barini and go hang out with him in his house. He was an animal too. So there's a lot of good guys. I wish I would have raced with Pierre Couture too. Pierre Couture from
Right.
Drummondville. Remember him?
Yep. Yep.
He was really good at Austin. He was a strong guy. So I think my mind's going fast. I'm trying to think, dropping some name, but we had a lot of guys. And obviously at the end there, when I raced with GSR, he was actually awesome. He had good technique. He was really strong. And you know the rest of the story with GSR. So the center of the province of Quebec is good rider now. It was a GSR after me, and he was definitely a fierce competitor. I would race him locally in the nationals, so we hung out a lot.
That's
Raced
awesome.
a
Yeah.
lot, hung out a lot. And nowadays he's I said that on a podcast. He's a customer now. He's a apartment buildings. And he buys my windows, so he's a customer now. So I guess we get along good.
Oh, and that's the second time that my camera has
Yeah,
died
huh?
mid-video. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, fierce competitors, and you yourself were one as well. You mentioned Austin, and off air we spoke about that track. It's a track that's near and dear to my heart. I was able to race it when I was very, very young. Unfortunately, it's no longer on the Manitoba series, and it's actually they turned it into a hobby golf course, believe it or not, for a short period of time.
Really? Oh, it's
Oh
done
yeah,
now.
it's gone. Yeah, like even there
Oh,
was there was a track called Austin 2, which was just down the road, which wasn't nearly as
okay.
deep as sand. So both of those tracks are kind of off the series. Thankfully, there's a track called Rough Woods that's maybe a mile from where the original track was that is still extremely deep sand. And we actually even had Ross out for kind of a renaissance ride about 4 or 5 years ago, and even raced the original layout, or at least remnants of the original layout of the original track. Both Al and Ross. I don't know how tall you are, but those guys are both pretty tall guys.
Yeah.
Long legs in the sand was probably an advantage for them. What about yourself?
Al was the tallest of all of us, and he's
Yes.
pretty well skinnier guy. I was 6'1", 190, and Ross
Yeah,
was
so
pretty.
you're a tall guy too. Then you're too tall to be a skier too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not the best physiques to go skiing. Not mogul skiing, downhill skiing. I guess I would do, but
Yeah.
yeah, we were pretty big. I always thought when JSR came by, he had more of the physiques for riding dirt bike. He's
Hmm.
still pretty tall, right about 6 feet, but he was about 150 pounds. So every time I raced him on the 125, I said, "You're about 30, 40 pounds lighter than me. So it's a
Yeah.
horsepower per 10 pound. So you got 4 horsepower on me right off the bat." But yeah, we were big, heavy guys in Canada. And I'll mention again Zolli Barini. He was a big guy too. Remember Tim Croft? I mean, right before me, when I was a young kid, they used to have that Yamaha Trick team,
Yep.
TRIC. There's some big boys on that picture if you look. So, yeah, we were big. It's not like we were no Jet Lawrence size.
No kidding.
I don't
I
know.
don't I
I
don't
don't
know what
know.
it is, but yeah, the Canadians were always pretty hardy bunch. You know what I mean? They're always like a little, maybe a little thicker. Maybe it's the poutine.
Maybe. Yeah, Poutine is from Drummondville. You know that?
I did
Born
know
and
that.
raised
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
Drummondville. It is. So yeah, we
Hell
were
yeah.
big. So we weren't the fastest 125 guy, but we didn't climb the hills very fast, but we came down very fast on our 125. But
There you go.
we were under power from against younger kids or smaller kids for sure.
I like it. So this is the first official episode of a series that I'm calling uh, Moto albums. So I'd imagine that so many fans would love to like flip through a photo album with one of their favorite racers, and you're certainly a favorite racer of many Canadians and Americans for that matter. So I thought it would be prudent to make you episode one of Moto albums. So I've collected some photos. Some you've
Thanks.
probably, I'm sure you've seen all these photos before, but what we're hoping for is to sort of dig out some stories about what's going on in the photo, what you remember about the gear, or some of the sponsorship deals, or maybe some other stories from that particular year. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go.
I have a. Did you dig the Hall of Fame photo I had on Facebook? I thought about that after we hung up last time. So I do have
I think
some of
so.
those pictures. I dug out a lot of pictures from the Hall of Fame. So we'll see the picture you have. Maybe it's the one I have on my Facebook. Maybe. So let's check
It,
them out.
it it just might be, but we'll
All
find out in just a moment here.
right.
So we're gonna share the screen and flip over to Moto albums. Guys over at
There
Verb
you
were
go.
nice enough to put this together for me. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
All right,
What an
perfect.
album. Episode
Well,
1. That's pretty cool. You went way back now. You went with an old guy. That's pretty good.
I like it. I like it. Well, we're gonna pull out some stories here. So right off the hop, first of all, I love
Um,
this Fox jersey. But I feel like the 44 machine is even further back in the annals of time. What are we looking at here on the 44 machine?
That was a motocross school. They used to call it the Can-Am Motocross School. Remember those orange bike that were made in Valcourt, Quebec here?
Yep.
There's a motocross school in Saint Gabriel de Brandon. You remember that? They used to
Yep.
have
Oh
a
yeah.
grand. They used to
They're
have a
doing a
grand.
big Can-Am event next week, actually, I think, or next
Yeah,
month.
well, a different Can-Am, but yeah, those side by side now. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, and that was a Honda MR50. That was a cool looking little bike. Then I would ride around the pit all the time, and all the bigger guys with the bigger bikes would ride on the track. And I was a king of the pit. I was a pit rider at that age. I was 8 years old on that picture. That's pretty cool. You found that. And on the right, it's I was 11 years old on a Yamaha 80. It's Saint Julie. And actually, I did a post a few years ago on that same corner in Saint Julie. They had a KTM photo shoot, and I would go there at the exact same corner, similar position. That was pretty cool. So I was a young kid then, 11
No
years old.
kidding.
Yeah.
Fox gear guy. That's pretty
Yeah.
early in the Fox like time period of when they were making gear. Yeah, what can you tell me about like do you remember getting this gear? Was it a sponsorship deal whatsoever, or were your parents shelling out for that?
Yeah, we paid everything. Have the JT nothing match. I had some
Yeah,
weird.
I see that.
I think I had almond gloves. The JT logo on the helmet. There's an old Simpson helmet that I think I had for like 4 or 5 years at least. Answer
Hmm.
bars, and I had the pants actually matching the jersey. So it was a race day because the rest of the time I had nothing that matched for practice. That was my race outfit, and I had those big Yofa shoulder pads. You can see like
Yeah.
big shoulder. I was a skinny kid at that age, so and I bought that year. My dad bought actually two Yamaha 80 from Gregoire, and I remember Bob Hanna had that trick fat number plate.
Yep.
So we tricked that out. My brother tricked that out for me and all of our bikes. So I had this big fat front number plate, which was the thing in the early 80s. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
no, that's a great look right there, and yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see you can go back in time. For those who actually don't know, the reason why a lot of guys had it's funny. Like nowadays, you have the number on the helmet as like a custom paint job, but back in the day, it was actually rule for the CMA that you had to have the number on the side of the
Yeah,
helmet in the case of
yeah,
a mud race, because they did lap counting back in the day, and that was actually a rule even in the AMA until about the mid 2000s. That you had to have the number on the side of the helmet, and even so, you'd see that if they didn't have it on the paint job in a mud race, they'd have to have that little card on the top of the helmet to let everyone
yeah.
know what number you are.
Yeah, I did. We did that a few times, but yes, you had to have that. And did you see the duct tape on the
I
visor?
see the duct tape. Yeah.
That was the cool thing too to have. Duct tape was the thing on the visor. So, and it was a money day, so I'm sure that it did help. But I had it on all the time for whatever reason. The pros had it, so I had to have that duct tape. That was cool.
Oh, for sure. And then the bomber would use blue, like he'd have a blue helmet and he'd use blue duct tape across the top.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
was
yeah.
yeah,
I did the gray one. That wasn't too stylish, but I did the gray one. So these were the days when there was no transponders. So
no.
the the scorer on the side of the track had a pretty tough job.
Any significance behind the number 92? You carried that number for quite some time. You still ran it on your the 300 until
Yeah,
you hung up the boots.
yeah. Actually, I don't remember actually why 44. I can't tell you the story, but we're three brother. I was 92. My older brother Pierre was 95. My brother Eric was 92. And it's pretty much my brother, I think, that came up with the 95. I should have to ask him. And we had a trailer, and it was number 92, 93, and 95. The three brother when we go on at the races. So that's why. But so until that day, I stuck with it. And it's not because I love Judy Weisel, not at all. Remember Jody? And people had asked me before that. So, and then my 92 ended up being 192. That was number from the motocross section guys. But nothing special to it. I mean, it was my brother that chose his number, and I matched something around that. We had to be in the 90s. So that's why. Simple as that.
Well, fair enough. Well, here in Manitoba, I'm number 95, and yeah, that's a number that's near and dear to my heart. So, oddly enough, it was given to me by CMRC back in the day when the numbers were like nationwide. So you were only allowed to have two-digit numbers, like whether you were in Ontario or Manitoba, you had to pick a two-digit number that you were like that's from coast to coast. And I was running number 39, and someone else had it. And yeah, they made me change. The only two-digit number available across the nation in the 85 class was 95, and I've stuck with it ever since. Let's see what else we got here. All right, this must be late in the career. I do not. You're gonna have to walk me through this gear a little bit. I see answer boots, but that's all I can really recognize. I recognize the guy in the Oakley goggles next to you here. But yeah, take me through this photo.
That was an arena cross. It was called Mini Stadium, Saint Tite, the Western Festival or Cowboy Festival they have there. And the first guy on the left is Buddy Ford, who was the promoter. Next guy with the OTW gear, I mean, it was Mike Jones. He always had that ugly gear, but he was getting paid, I guess. But I told him that actually. So that was Mike Jones. He was really good. He was racing a lot in Canada. He was another animal too. He was another type of animal. And
is that Mad Mike? That's Mad Mike Jones.
Yeah, that's Mike Jones. Yeah, I thought.
Holy crap!
Yeah, Morgan Racing. You know, I always had a lot of those American guys coming to race in Quebec, and they were doing the Canadian Series, and that was Mike. Trophy girl, me, I was always an answer guy. Rick Sharon was really good to me. And from 87, 88, I was wearing answer. Yeah, starting 87, answer gear. And I was answer gear all along my career until 1995. So Rick was really good. He was, in a way, a mentor. He always brought me down to earth where I would show up to him in Vancouver at R&M Motorsport. Remember R&M?
Yep.
And I want gear. I want money. You know, I thought it was pretty cool. I was winning races, and he would tell me, well, Carl, I mean, I don't sell more gear because I give you gear and pay you. But I do it because I like you and I like motocross. But, you know, and he always had some good, always business counseling. I went to see him a few years ago at his house in Langley. So he would take me down to earth, and I look at it nowadays. He was spoiling me, and it stuck. I mean, I wouldn't have changed for a few more dollars. He was just really so good to me, and he treated me well. Al Jaggard was there too. He had a lot of good people there. So I was an answer guy from day one till the end. And on the right there's JSR. With
the young JSR right there. He's a kid.
Yeah, the Biaffi gear. And I don't know. He had some, I can't read with that. Oh, a Titrex sponsor? I don't know.
Looks like it.
I'd have to ask him. And that was 1994. I was 24. And it was actually a 125 main. Go figure. Me and Mike. Mike was he was a pretty muscular guy. I remember seeing Mike Jones.
He's good on 125 though, oddly enough. Like good on 125 for a guy who's that big.
Yeah. So we beat JSR that night, as amazing as it is on a 125. So that's the picture from Saint Tite.
And so what series was this? Was it a Quebec Arena Cross series or?
Actually, was pretty weird. They had a arena cross series, mini stadium series, and had a supercross series. Well, supercross was just Montreal and Toronto. You know, I wish I would have combined all of it together because we had a lot of good Canadian, like top Canadian guy doing that. So yeah, I think we might have done maybe 2 rounds of it. So I won that, but I don't put it at the bat on my resume. It was to me it was just a one event, a few events deal. So yeah, that was the mini stadium series. I think it lasted maybe a few years.
Fair enough. Well, the trophy girl looks really happy to be there, and she's wearing some nice light
Yeah, it
black
looks like it.
jeans.
No Red Bull Monster setup like we have nowadays, huh?
That's for damn sure.
Mhm.
What else we got here? Okay, so this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is Montreal Supercross. Unless you can correct me. Who? We know you're. What's going on here?
That's Toronto, Toronto
Okay.
Supercross, Skydome, 1990. And that's me in the main. That's Larry Wharton in the back.
Okay, that's Big Bird.
Yeah, Big Bird. He showed up. He was another of the recruits of Morgan Racing, showed up just for that one race. And that race, actually, I got third. It was Larry Ward. Second guy was McGrath. And McGrath did that one race all by himself. I think it had a supercross or a race not too far the week after. And
Okay.
that's the first time I met McGrath. Actually, it was really cool. I always stayed close to him. And I was third. So that was the main.
Oh, right in there with
Yeah.
some top American guys. This what year is this? Is this 91?
Yeah, 1990.
1990. Okay,
Yeah,
so like McGrath is still on 125s for 2 more years after this in on big bikes.
actually, that was the year it was on the Cowie.
Okay.
And he did race a few supercross. And that the year after, he was on the peak bike. And after that, he went like
Yeah.
skyrocketed. So became a multi-time supercross champion we all know about.
Certainly. What was the connection with you and Esso? Like, is that an Esso Canada sponsorship? Like, that must have been pretty big back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, when Hoover, we had Serwall that had Labatt, and Hoover had Esso, and I went to see Texaco. I like the Texaco star, and I said, well,
You had
some years,
you had a sweet black jersey with the red
yeah,
Texaco in the middle.
nice cotton black jersey for summer in Canada. Yes, I did wear and we went to see. We put up like a resume, and we sent our things to Texaco Canada, and we said, well, the competitor, SO as a rider, and we did our little thing with me and my brother. We went there, and the one guy at Texaco, we caught his attention, and he called the guy. After he said, if Honda is sponsoring you, is interested in you, I want to hear what they have to say. So he made the phone call to one of the big guy in Honda Canada, and he sold me to the thing, and they sponsored me. So 88, 89, I was sponsored by Texaco, and halfway through the year of 1989, Esso Imperial Oil bought Texaco.
Oh,
So
there you go.
right there and then, as they made me switch. Halfway through the 89 season, they repainted my truck, and I had to redo all my gear. And starting 89, my Esso sponsorship I had from 88 until 1993.
There
So it
you
was
go.
pretty good. That was a pretty good deal. 91, 92, I had really good deal. Good money with him. I was stoked. That was really good.
No kidding. That is some outside the industry sponsorship that I think we were jealous of to this day. Like also, how are you communicate? How did they communicate that with you that Texaco got purchased? Like, would they just like a letter show up in the mail and say, "Hey," or did
They
you get a phone
call
call?
the old phone, they call.
Yeah, rotary
And,
phone.
yeah. I might have had a fax back then. I don't know. We went to their office in Montreal. They made their phone call. I think they called like not even more than 2 weeks after that. And they said, well, we got this, because we showed the budget for the year. I know they were going to take all of it, but I was surprised what they took out of it. And at the end of that first year or second year, I don't remember, the way they measured their investment. Yeah, winning races is cool, but the big thing for them was to have my picture in the newspaper with the SO logo. And I had the front cover once, like a small picture in the front cover for the Montreal Supercross. It must have been in 1990. I finished second there that one year, and I had the picture. And in the sports page, I had a big picture, and my mom would pick all those newspaper article, make a big scrapbook, and I would show it to them at the end of the year. And that's how they measure the investment.
Wow. That's
If
really
we
cool.
that page in the sport is worth X amount of dollar. And at one point, I'm like, the way they were telling me how much it was worth, I was like, well, I'm a deal, sort of, you know what I'm saying? So that's how they measured it. Nowadays, it's, how many followers you have on Instagram. Back then, it's how many pages. And I remember I was pretty good friend with the two big newspaper in Montreal, La Presse and Journal de Montréal. And the sports guys would say, call me every week, good or bad. I don't want you to call me and have your cool win. Call me when it's bad. Call me when it's good. And I'm going to follow you all year. And they did do that. Sometimes I'd call them on Sunday night. I mean, I sucked. I got beat. I crashed. And, it's okay. They would still make an article. So actually was really good. It made me, gave me the discipline after the race to call somebody to, when I did good, it was fun. When I did bad, it was no fun, but they followed me all year long, and they did respect me for that, good or bad, all the way until Montreal Supercross. Because the season started May till September. You could see me. I was I guess I was popular for motorsport in Quebec. I was no ball and stick guy, but for motorsport, I was fairly known, I think.
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said for like facing the music when things go bad, and also like as a guy who does interviews, I love when guys they're more than happy to do an interview whether they did poorly or bad, and or good or like, you know what I mean, like no matter what. And I think people want to hear that story. In fact, sometimes the stories about why things go poorly or this, that, and everything, it honestly turns out to be a better story than like, oh yeah, I was just feeling it and I crushed it that day. Like those things are more relatable to fans, and it kind of humanizes the racers a little bit.
It's always cool when you win. You can say whatever you want. You're the baddest and the coolest, but you can still be. You learn through those losses. So it was a good. It was good. It's a good thing I did that. So
speaking of doing well, this guy looks pretty happy. The number one. And is that your old man behind you there?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, my dad's happy. I'm happy too. That's 1985. I was 15. Lethbridge. I think they still have that track nowadays, but I went there once, never went there again. Lethbridge, Alberta was a hard-packed little track, sort of a dust bowl, but it was a fun track. Not too many big hills, but it was a fun track. And my dad on the left, we drove. He took some time off from work, and we drove to the. It was called the Amateur National. It's, whatever it was. It was our only national in the year. So I was an intermediate, which was a senior back then, which doesn't make sense. Remember, they had junior, senior, expert.
Yeah.
There was novice, intermediate. So that was the amateur national in Lethbridge. And I think I was the first one to win two classes. I won 250 and 500 that one year. And I got beat in the 125 that year. So I was pretty stoked. That was I think that was my 500. Yeah. I had just gotten a 500 2-3 weeks before that.
How old are you here racing a 500?
I'm 15, but I was a big guy. So
no kidding.
Actually, I rode a 5. I hadn't ridden a 500 the fall before. When I was 14 at the last race of the year, some guy borrowed me his CR500, and I loved it. So the next year I won 125, 250, And there's a couple of guys that were doing the 500. I thought were all by themselves. I could smoke them in 125 and 250. So right before the national, I said, let's try to go for, a three-peat or the three-class thing. I only won two. So I bought the five. We got the 500 like 2 weeks before that. I raced one local race and we went out west.
What was it about the 500 that kind of suited your style? Like a bit of a more of like kind of smooth operator, just enjoyed the way the bike kind of hit. And what was the key to making these things go fast?
Well, the one thing, I was a bigger guy. I was a bigger kid, and second, winning the 500 in those days was the thing. That was the big class. So for me to get better and be the best, I had to handle the 500. In the end, through the years after that, it didn't really change. But I remember when Pierre Couture in Drummondville was number two and Ross would win the 500. Every time we would go to the races, me as a kid, I would watch the 500 guys. Was like the Moto GP thing, or the MX1
Yeah.
sort of thing. So that's why for me to be good in the 500, I had to get one early and, get my ass in gear if I wanted to win. So that's why we got the 500.
So are we buying JT gear or are we getting a deal on this stuff at the time?
Actually, that we went to Florida that year before, and we went to a big dealership in Orlando. We were pretty pumped because we saw all the gears in the magazine that we couldn't get anywhere. So my dad picked everything. So yeah, when we were buying gears, JT was the thing. So, but I have eye point pants and JT shirt.
I like it.
No, yeah, that's too funny. I don't know. I'm trying to remember the boots I had. I think I had Axo boots.
There you
So
go. Just putting things together.
it was like a pizza, mix and match.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, you're a little bit more put together here.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
number one, I love the blue plates, by the way. Like that
yeah.
era, the chest protector, nothing on the back, answer gear. Honestly, this era of answer gear is really, really solid. I think they should come back and
Yeah,
and do a
yeah,
throwback to this. But you're always an Arai helmet guy, with the
yeah,
detachable front nose piece and all that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, take me through this photo if you could.
As local race, Bay St. Paul, 1991. I crashed earlier that year. I separated my shoulder, which I have a souvenir from here.
There you go.
A Clavicular 3 and grade 3, sorry. And that was a local race. So that bike was ultra fast. 1990, I won like the overall. They made that overall number one plate. And I was like I won the 500, but I didn't win 125 and 250. So I had the number one, but I had won the number one in the 500 the year before. But they made that overall plate. So Ross had the number one, white and black, and me blue. And it was the same thing. They had that in the U.S. a few years before. Remember that when
Grand
Bailey?
National
Yeah,
Champion, yeah.
yeah, that's what they called it. So that's why I had the number one plate. Uh, and I had 1990. I won that overall. In 91, I had like 7 250, 3 500, or 2 500 and 3 125. I mean, Honda had a big budget and gave me tons of bike. And sadly, I got hurt the second round, and I was off for like 6 7 weeks. And I came back at the end of the national. I won the first nationals I did. I won the last one I did, but it wasn't enough to keep the number one plate. And but my bikes were always fresh and mint. It was all Pro Circuit done. Motor that was done by Pro Circuit, and suspension factory connection, and obviously answer gear and everything.
Oh yeah,
That
is that factory connection on the front
yeah, on the forks.
forks?
Yeah, yeah. And
No way.
that bike was so badass. I loved it. It was fast. I mean, I felt so good on bike. As much as I like riding 500, 250. I mean, I like the 250 more. And the story about factory connection, when Pro Circuit would do your motor, it would work right off the bat, which was great. But suspension wise, it was too complicated, to send my stuff in the US. So I ended up meeting, it was Mike McAndrews. He was a Kawasaki
Yep.
mechanic. Remember the name?
Yep.
And he was in Vermont, and I had heard about it in Florida, and I got my Pro Circuit stuff, and it wasn't to what I wanted. I needed to test, so we drove to Factory Connection when it was in Mike McKendry's house in Vermont, and I started with him in 1989, and from '89 on, I went all till the end of my career with Factory Connection. So that's who did my bike. Was great. And a few years after that, it was Ricky Zfielder that bought Mike McAndrews. He got a job at Rock Shocks. So that's the story behind Factory Connection. And still to this day, my bike was done up by Factory Connection last year. My last bike, Mike Haste. You know Mike Haste?
Yep.
He was a mechanic for me, for Ross,
That's
and then
right.
me. He lives not too far down the road from where I'm at right now. He lives in Drummondville, and he still works for Factory Connection. So
Hmm.
nobody gets his suspension done in Canada. So I drove to him, and he took it to the States because he drives there a lot, back and forth. So I was lucky to get my stuff done by Mike. So that was a good deal.
Always a Scott goggle guy too. I think you're running roll-offs here, but why always a Scott goggles? Just like the product?
I like the product and I like the setup. Bevo in the States was always treating me really well. And I got hooked up with him. That year I did the Supercross. I was staying at a friend's house in Ocala, Florida. A guy named Dawson Ransom. We were good buddies. I went to his house and he used to live in Pennsylvania. And Bevo was friends with his parents and they were friends with Bob Hanna. So I got a few goggles the year before through R&M and M and everything. And then that year in '89, I would hang out with Dawson. Bob Hanna was there, and Bevo would hang out there, and his truck was there during the week, so I got everything. He would throw stuff, boxes of stuff in my cube van during the week. He treated me really well, and from that day on, I was always a Scott guy till the end. I always had good connection with sponsor. I was really loyal to whoever sponsored me. A Rye Helmet, Answer, Scott, Factory Connection, very loyal. Family values we still have nowadays. So I was the same. I wouldn't have changed for a few dollars. So once I had a good setup and good service, I wasn't going anywhere for money.
Who did this paint job? The checkered flag looks pretty good. This is a pretty iconic look for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually had a few guys in Quebec that did my helmet. Everybody would paint helmet back then. So, but this one guy in Quebec was pretty good. So he did. Yeah, it was mostly his creation. They're artistic people, so I would send him my helmet. I'm gonna do this and that. What do you want? Obviously I want the number there, the right helmet, and the SO all the time, and the Scott that was pretty good. But he would tell me I'm going to do this, and I would always pretty much agree. So my helmets were pretty cool. I was pretty spoiled in that too. So it was art. I had Arco in New England that did my helmet. This guy was from Quaticook, not too far from here. Did my helmet. He's a pretty cool dude.
What do you still have a few relics from your like helmets and stuff from your racing days? Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, on Instagram last year, I got Kimpex is an Arai distributor,
Okay.
and they gave me an Arai last year to ride. Last year and this year, obviously, I had it, and I took a picture with my Arai helmet from last year and the old relics I have from because when I started riding like again more and more in 2018, I took some of my old Arai helmets from downstairs, but they're always dried up. All the
Yeah.
foam
All the
that was,
foam's coming apart. Yeah. It's just
yeah, and it was, it's really flat. It wasn't doing its job. So I got another helmet from Kimpex before they gave me the other Arai. So I had some old relics I took pictures of. I think I kept like 6 or 7 of them.
mhm.
So pretty badass. I was Those were the best helmet, though. I mean, have you ever tried a ride? No kidding. I
I've
mean,
never
not
worn.
kidding.
I've worn an Arai street bike helmet. Never worn a Arai motocross helmet. I got to admit, you're probably one of the only guys who made that detachable face guard look really good. Like I never liked it with Stanton back in the day or Guy Cooper, but this is a strong look. I'm not gonna lie. It's a good looking
Yeah, yeah,
helmet.
yeah. They were really comfortable. We used to go to Daytona, and they had a pretty cool budget. So if you would go to them and I want to be your guy, and they were pretty open. So we go to every year to Daytona. We would get like 3 or 4 helmets leaving from there, and if you need something else during the year, maybe get another one or two from a ride. But they would have a ton of helmet. You would tell them why I need this size, and I always got an egg. They had to be white, so they got painted.
Yeah,
Nowadays, it's cool to have an egg, but back then they had to get painted. So that was the thing. So pretty
that's
spoiled.
cool.
Daytona was the setup where you get your free Arai helmet.
There you go. And you raced Daytona more than a couple of times.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite photos, and like one of the things that I absolutely love about your era is that it's different than nowadays where yeah, you show off your Instagram following, this, that, and everything. But I still feel like I almost feel like now, even though there's more connectivity and easier ways to connect between racers and sponsors than ever before, guys are so much more sheepish or so much more like they don't put themselves out there or knock on doors like they used to. Whereas you guys, in order to go get sponsorships and where you
Yeah.
get hooked up, like you had to go put your face out there, go meet some people and make some stuff happen. And like, dude, like holy hockey hair. That might be the best. I think you might have to bring the mullet back. You're like, yeah, no homo, but you might be one of the best looking motocross racers. I see why you were single all throughout your professional career.
Well, it was a good time to be single. Definitely. Drive around the country. That was too much fun, but we're gonna leave it at that for now. I
There you
was
go.
I guess I was pretty fluid. It must have been my French accent with the girls that made it. I don't know. I can't say. I mean, you could ask other people, but I did pretty good in that department, I guess. And yeah, that answer gear again. I think they had some such badass stuff in the 90s. I think it was too hot, that jersey, but then again, it was pretty cool. I don't know if you remember that gear. I think maybe you wore it and stuff.
Yep.
Uh, that bike, though, I mean, Paul Pemix teased me a few months ago. They had something on an old Cowie bike, and he tagged me on an Instagram, and I said, "Well, that 1992 bike was just horrible. Uh,
Really? That's a
it was
spine frame. That's yeah,
I mean,
this
that
is
bike was a
yeah.
pig. It was slow. Uh, I could go on with this bike. It was a tough year. Going from that 1991 Honda that you saw a few pictures before to
Right.
that bike, and they had changed it the year before to whatever it was. I mean, I remember coming in Florida through some berms, and the clutch wouldn't disengage. So you would
Okay.
come in like pull the clutch in, rear brake, and you want to redirect the bike, and the bike I would overshoot turns because I don't know the clutch basket. I needed some better parts that I got along the way during the season, but it was a tough winter, and the bikes would always blow up. And they would tell me, "Well, change your jetting because of this, change this because of that." I mean, we know all that. We've been doing that for years. We'll rejet them, and we know what to do. Everything we did on other two strokes I've had before, never had any problem. And Dave Gallen had just started with me, and man, did he work his ass off. I mean, it was insane taking those motor apart. I mean, it was nonstop. And it was like a time bomb. I think it was always going
Mm.
to explode. And as we got to the end of my trip in Florida, January, February, March, I remember we stayed after Daytona. It was early April, and I wanted to ride a little more. And I remember one day I came to the truck and I said, it wasn't my race bike, it was my practice bike. And I said to Dave, I don't think we're going to make it. This thing is just not going to make it. And we packed our things and road to Quebec, and my frame must have been broken in like 6 or 7 places. The thing would vibrate. We made some phone calls. We got some few parts from Kawasaki that came from the US, I think. With the
Hmm.
clutch, we made a big difference with the clutch. Anyway, we welded the thing, and maybe 5 pounds of schnot of welding everywhere. It was insane. But halfway through the year, actually the bike was, fairly decent. It wasn't as good as my Honda, but it was actually not too bad. The 500 was good, but the
Yeah,
250,
KX 500 would have been good. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was the same bike. It had been the same bike for many years, so you
Hmm.
really didn't do anything to that bike. We welded the frame, wherever it was broken in anything, but the 250, especially the 250, was unreal. I didn't like it.
Hmm.
I'm gonna leave it at that for now. So that was my
Why switch to Kawasaki in the first place?
uh, like you say all the time, we have to put ourselves out there and sell ourselves. And at the end of 1991, Honda had a major budget cut, and I made some phone call and had nothing. And I don't know, am I still racing or
Hmm.
not? So I got in touch with Alan Labrosse, who was Miguel Duhamel's agent,
Okay.
and he told me I have good connection to Kawasaki and can get you something. I said, whatever you can get me, or else I'm just gonna go buy Hondas. I wanted to go buy Honda, and he got me a good deal. Too bad the bikes weren't that great, but he got me a deal with the Kawasaki. So, and Suzuki was pretty loaded up too that year, and probably Yamaha too. I mean, we made the phone calls everywhere, so we ended up with Kawasaki that year. Alan Labrosse. That's the story.
There you go, and a pretty heavy answer gear on top of that. Those cotton jerseys were they look good, but I'm thinking that in +30 heat that would have been pretty
Yeah,
hot, especially the black stuff you wore.
yeah. It was cool looking, but yeah, it was hot. I remember that nothing flexible, and it was thick material. I mean, it was resistant, but it was pretty hot. That's for sure.
I like it. And I also love. Do you have a set of these high flyer cards, or do you at least have the ones of yourself?
I must have one. Yeah, I'm sure I do. I must have kept like maybe a little pile of 5, 6 of them.
Mm,
I kept a lot of old stuff. Yeah, I'm sure
okay,
I do.
good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
do.
where are we here? This is I think is it Honda days or like first of all, is
Yeah,
this you at least?
yeah. That's Honda 1987. Uh,
1987. Where are we?
I'm thinking. Yeah, that's Montreal for sure. BF Goodrich. Yeah, that's Montreal Supercross in 1987. Uh, yeah, actually, I see Answer Gear. That year it wasn't free, but we sort of had a deal. So that's when I started with Garnier Boots, which was distributed by R&M. And yeah, Answer Gear. That's a helmet I must have repainted maybe 5, 6 times. I had from since 1984 or something. So that's that for the gear. Uh, that year it was my second year pro. The first year was to get a top 10 in 86. I was pumped. I got a seventh in 250. Back then, the number plates were per classes. Uh,
Okay.
I was number 8, 125, number 7 in 250. I didn't do the 586. So after 85, I didn't do that in the first pro year. And I didn't do that good in Montreal, but we made the finals and everything. But I don't know, 88 I did better, but 87 was a so-so year. I was 17.
Okay. When like at this time, a lot of like there's some pretty big names from the States that are coming up to race the Montreal Supercross. Do you remember being kind of awestruck by these guys at all, or kind of being like, "Holy crap, I'm on the line with so and so"?
Uh, not really. I mean, there was no sorry. There was no David Bailey or anything. So it was always like I don't want to say the second class American. It was like, it wasn't the top guys, but maybe the second group that's still
Yeah,
really
the B
fast.
group. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really respectful to say that, but that's what it was. Not really. I mean, I was just trying to make the main and make a top 10, which was my big thing. So Ross was obviously the big guy then, and Al Dick too was pretty good. So all those guys that we named. So no, I sort of did my thing. 17, young kid, didn't think too much. I just want to race and do good. So no, I wasn't starstruck then. Nope.
Just wanted to ride his dirt bike.
Yeah,
Okay, so back in the day, Racer X did like a Canadian version of this.
yeah,
But is this like I'm completely unfamiliar, and I wanted to use this picture because I was curious as to what it was. Like, did Motocross Action have like a Canadian version for a short period of
yeah.
time? What
I
was
think
what
they
was the
did.
deal here?
Yeah, I think they had it for like 3 months. It was a really short deal.
Okay.
I don't know who was behind this, but yeah, we had motocross action for like a few months, which was going to be the new media in Canada, and that picture was taken in San Diego. Right behind me is Ronnie Tishner, who's a
I was gonna
factory.
say that's Tishner, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That's pretty good. He was on the right
Yeah.
guy. I'd like to spread the picture, but I think he was on the right guy on that picture too. So
Yeah, no, he is. He's got like you guys are both sporting basically the exact same helmet. I actually really like your paint job here. That is
yeah,
that's pretty sharp.
I had some pretty good guys painting my helmet. That was pretty good. And actually, that trip we were in Florida, and after the Winter Rams, we did a few races in January, and we're like, let's drive to California. Like you mentioned before, a lot of sponsors were in California and never made it to California before. Like 88, 89, I would go to all the East Coast race and stuff. But, and I think I did in 89 the one race in Texas, but never went to California. So let's say, let's go to California. I drove with John Dowd, and Ross was around there too at that time. A lot of guys from the East Coast, American guys, Canadian guys. We went to San Diego. So I went to see a bunch of sponsors the week before that, and the week after, I went to remember Hill Palm Avenue in San Diego,
Yeah, it's just
where all
north
the
of
guys
San
live in the
Diego.
cliffs and everything. I wanted to go there, so I went there too. Keith Johnson was a factory KTM then, and we met him, and actually he was in El Cajon.
Okay.
So we met. I raced the Supercross San Diego, and was pretty pumped. I made the main. I mean, I made the main the year before in '89 in 250. I made the two class in Daytona, but like on a real Supercross track, you know what I'm saying? Like, the hard
I
pack
hear you.
stuff. Yeah, that was the first 250 main I did, so I was pretty pumped. And that race in the main that was battling with Ross, and Ross cartwheel and injured himself pretty bad in 1990. He came like pretty late in that season. Uh, his liver or something tore his liver. He had a
Hmm.
pretty bad crash in that final, sadly for him.
No kidding. Like, did you get to ride any like the Honda Land or any of the kind of iconic practice
No,
facilities or practice spots in California, or were you just sort of gypsying around at the time?
no, we weren't cool enough to go to Honda Land. That's for sure. Yeah, we rode pretty much. Keith Johnson, KJ was running um, Hill Palm Avenue. They had tracks. They had so much stuff. You could ride cliffs, and they had like big long tracks to the hill. So that's what we did. We did ride there. I actually went to. No, that was another trip. We pretty much rode for like the week before and a few days after, and then we drove back to. It was right before Gatorback a few weeks after that, so we had to drive back to Florida. That's when they used to have like um, the one national in between the Supercross series, like
Mhm.
in the middle of the Supercross series, nobody liked. So it was Gainesville and then Daytona, and it was Atlanta a few weeks after that. So we only went to do San Diego, and we drove back.
Your bikes always look good in and around this era. Were you doing the numbers and all that, or were you like who was working for you at the time, mechanic wise, to make the bike look good?
1990, I would buy my digit. Actually, this one, I maybe I did cut them up. That's before because I remember in 1991 I was sponsored by 100%,
Okay.
and it was just in that era where they were doing the backgrounds and the numbers. You would buy those die cut numbers. It was not like a
Yep.
full on covered bike, but you would get the digit and the background. That was like the cool thing. But I think it was a cut up. It must have been cut up by hand, and
No kidding.
maybe it's a Manitoba guy thing, but I'm not sure. I think those were Jer digits. You should ask him. Remember
Okay.
Jerry?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I think that's what they were. That's a good question. It
Huh.
might have been what they were because I don't
That's
remember it
funny.
because he used to buy those skinny numbers, flat and long, skinny that were ugly,
Yeah.
and I think they were Jer. If you
Okay.
know,
Fair enough.
you see around, you ask him. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I always want a nice bike, because I like a good looking bike, and you know, I had this different mindset, I guess. My stickers always had to be right for the sponsors. In the end, you want your sponsors every time you have a picture, everything was correctly put on my shoulder pad. So I would have to take the answer logo on the chest because I had to squeeze the answer. So I would go to R&M and give me this sticker, this type of sticker. So I would spend a lot of time doing all the sticker uh, coordination on my bike and shoulder pad and helmet. Everybody had to have their own spot, and the biggest one obviously also had to be seen everywhere. But
Hmm.
I try to make it look good. So, and the
There you
one thing
go.
they see, the levers,
Yeah, I was
those were
looking at the levers. What is going on here with the is that are those little covers on the levers? What's going on here?
they're the little grips, the Scott grip stickers for the levers.
Okay.
So there's a sticker which really
Yeah, it's got a tack on
not
it.
smooth, so better grip. We don't use that
Okay.
anymore, obviously, but back then it was the cool thing. So I had
No
to have a
kidding.
new one every time we raced a big race. Have the new sticker, uh, Scott lever, whatever they were. So that's what that's pretty funny.
Those are awesome. And yeah, bikes looks good, and if you look good, you're gonna
Yeah,
ride good. And that's the end of this live show, my
like it.
friend. What is going on here? Okay. But yeah, so you had a fantastic career. What are the things that you like look back on most fondly from like your time racing professionally, whether it's going down to the States, racing Canadian nationals, the people that you met, the times that you shared. What do you look back on most fondly?
I mean, it was my life. I did race about 45 to 50 weeks. No, not 50 because I always took like a month off. But I would race at least 45 weeks out of the year. And sometimes that would be like a Friday night arena cross, Saturday night arena cross, and Sunday provincial. And to make it, because I did make, you know, not to today's standard, but I did make good money. Out of racing, I bought my first house, and which was for me awesome. But to make good money, you had to race every weekend. You couldn't take like many weeks off. So uh, it was like a guy that plays music on the road, like a roadie. That's what we're doing. Everywhere there was a race, I wanted to show up, and it was life on the road in a box van with my mechanic. Meet tons of people. We would rent houses in Florida. I used to live in Florida, like maybe 4 months out of the year. So it was just a good time when you're a single guy, like you mentioned before, and travel across the country. I would go to races, do races in Europe in the fall. So it was fun. We'd have beat up bikes in the end of the year, but we raced as much as we could. And it was a hell of a time.
What's did you ever come across? You must have come across. You guys are about the same vintage.
Hmm.
Lawrence Ham. He's a
Yeah.
Manitoban that was he's another guy who was a pretty stocky guy, tall guy that raced in the late 80s, early 90s. Do you have a hamburger story?
Lawrence Hemmings number 33, was he?
89, 87 usually.
But I know him. I mean, he was a
Yeah,
big dude.
he's
I
a big
mean,
guy.
he was
Yeah.
bigger, but he was big. I actually don't have sadly, I don't have a story. I mean, I definitely want to be on this side at a night at the bar because you don't want to mess with this guy. I mean, he was a
Yeah,
big dude, but no, I didn't really hung out with him. So too bad I don't have his stories. I'm sure you
fair
guys
enough.
in Manitoba have a ton of story, but I don't.
Well, that just means that he wasn't quite quick enough to give you too much of a race on too many different nights. But I was just thinking because I know he was sort of like he wasn't the guy who was shy about going down to the States and doing some like barnstorming and riding all kinds of races. And I think like it was just such a different time as far as like racing those small fair races and just sort of
Oh,
barnstorming and all that fun stuff. It was just a completely different time of like the
yeah.
culture of racing. Guys like yourself would like, all right, maybe I can't make X number of dollars purely off of my sponsors, but if I couple that money with racing these races, then at the end of the day, I can make a living at it. And I think what reminded me of Lawrence is the fact that he said that he literally bought his first house off of what he raced, he won as a racer. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. There's not too many guys who can actually say that here in 2023.
What's this state under Manitoba in the U.S.? I think it was,
Minnesota,
I
North
was going to
Dakota.
say Michigan, Minnesota, because I know a lot of guys were going to do an arena cross there. I would go do arena cross when I was in Florida. We would go to South Carolina. There was a lot of fast guys. Jim Chester, Mike Brown used to do a lot of them. Jeremy Buell was pretty good then. I remember going to arena cross in North or South Carolina. I don't remember, but people are saying, Carl, you're going to get smoked. There's a lot of fast guys. And I'm like, hell with it. I don't care. I got to win in Canada. It doesn't matter what I do here. I just want to race. I think I got like a top 5 in the 125 and got the whole shot in the 250 class and ran away with it. I was so pumped, but I did anything, like I said, anywhere there was a race, and I was good money that day too. So every time we would hit arena cross or anything, the more you raced, the more you racked up the money. And in Canada, I would sell T-shirt on the weekend. I would, and actually JSR did that along the way too with me. I would ask start money to go to a local race in Quebec because I didn't want to do the local races in Quebec. I was all by myself. Only when JSR came along was pretty good, but before that there was not really any competition. Some of
Right.
the
You
guys
just be
from Ontario
gone.
would come. I mean, I love Chip Clark, but I would race Chip Clark and he would pretty much beat him all the time. So I didn't feel I was getting better. So I was
Mm-hmm.
sort of making a business out of it. You want me to show up to your local race, and Honda would double the payout. Back then, I did negotiate that with him, with Honda, and it was only me. I think they did it with riders before. I would sell T-shirt and get start money, and sometime would ask an extra. If they had a jump contest, I was there. It was an extra few dollars. So I was trying to make a show out of it, and I
What
would
was your
stay.
trick? Did you have tricks?
And back then, it was only whips. That's all you did.
Okay.
Whips and the legs out. And along the way, I was the first few guys. We had a few guys in Canada did it. I did the McGrath neck, not as good as him, but I did do the necks and jump contests. But necks were cool. Necks
Yeah,
were cool. But
they're still cool.
a good old whip was just if they had a good jump, whip was the thing. So that's all it was. It was a whip contest.
Okay.
So I keep talking and I'm like, man, we did a lot of things to get whatever you could get us to do for a bit of money. We were there. It didn't matter. And we weren't paid that much for all the risks we took.
Do you still have some Carl Vaillancourt t-shirts? I'd love to see them.
Uh, I'm sure I do. I did try to keep one race shirt a year in an old box at home.
Okay.
I'm sure I do. They
I
weren't
would love
really.
to, like, you don't have to send me anything like that, but I would love to see an image of something like that. That'd be pretty neat because that is very industrious of you. That like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
say that's pretty cool.
And I did sell a lot of them to Montreal Supercross too. We
Yeah.
had like 50,000 people. I think I sold a couple of thousand. Just I used to order 1,000 at a time, and I could
Hmm.
sell like maybe a couple hundreds on the weekend.
That's
Like in
awesome.
Valley Junction, they had 12,000 people the one year in 1990. I
Hmm.
mean, there's a lot of people there. I mean, we had a lot of good nationals in Quebec. Rimouski, uh, Valley Junction, and a lot of good arena cross, the Quebec Coliseum. We had some good events in Quebec. The Quebec people were really good. So provincial, national, and arena cross. Quebec was a good place to be in the 90s for racing motocross.
Absolutely, it was, and you certainly made it that way as well. Carl Vaillancourt here on the BigMx Radio podcast. It's been an awesome time to chat with you. For those who aren't interested in hearing me and Carl talk about skiing, this is your time to probably shut off the podcast. Because yeah, like I can't let you off here without talking about your not only your skiing but also your son's skiing. Your son is on he's on the like he's is he on the Canadian mogul team? Is he on the development team? What level does he ski at?
Actually, I have my son and my daughter that did race compete mogul skiing. My daughter went to provincial with Elliot and Sandrine, and after provincial, my daughter quit, and along the way, my son Elliot made national
The
team
D team?
development,
Yep.
and then he won the NORAM a couple of times. And when you win NORAM, which is
Mhm.
like the American League in hockey, then you get a few games on the World Cup. So he would jump NORAM to World Cup a few times, and it's all a point system. So if you go NORAM, you do points, and it allows you to go to World Cup. And when you go on World Cup, well, you got to do enough points to keep your World Cup spot. So spot, sorry. So the last years he's been on the World Cup team. So he does World Cup now. He's like the Moto GP of skiing, you could
That's
say.
cool. Yeah, no, that is the absolute pinnacle
Yeah,
of freestyle skiing. That is the
yeah,
highest
yeah.
level. Yeah,
Yeah. So last year's has really blossomed, especially this year. And there's 60 guys that come to a mogul event, and only 16 qualify. And
that's crazy.
the day one is usually like 60 guys out, and it's a judge sport, which is that's the worst part. I mean, as
Oh
much
yeah.
as skiing is great, a judging sport for anybody that knows about judging, motocross was great. You rode bad, you jumped bad, you didn't look good, you went off the track, didn't matter. If you came first, you won. That's it. In skiing, if you don't look good, you're not straight, you don't hold your poles perfectly, you don't do that jump perfectly at that right angle, judge will have you, off the final. So it's he keeps plugging away, plugging away, plugging away. And this year finally is a top 10 World Cup. He made two top fives, a top six. So this year was really like, oh, about time. It's a lot of work, but I could say he sort of made it. Hasn't won World Cup, but he's a top 10 guy now and top five on their good day. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, there's one guy on the team that's been making sure that there's not a lot of guys who win those
I
damn
know.
events. And I actually competed against the guy. I was
Really?
on the yeah. Being from Manitoba, there are not a lot of freestyle skiers from here. Obviously, we live in the
No.
prairies. But my bread and butter was moguls, and so because I was a half decent mogul skier locally, I immediately was put onto the provincial team to go to Canada Winter Games in
Well,
2006. It was
where are
06 or
you?
oh 07? Oh 07, yeah. Oh 07 in Whitehorse. So I got 20th in moguls, like in the singles, and then I got because I was 20th, I had to face against Mikkel in duels.
Did you?
So I'm standing in the
Well,
blocks
you have a
and
you have a fifth sheet. I'm gonna go look it up.
oh yeah, no, I'm sure I'm in there somewhere. Yeah, you go look it up. I got absolutely smoked by Mikkel Kingsbury. The two of us are sitting in the blocks, and I look at him. I'm like, dude, like I'm gonna have like the best view of your bottom air while I'm like skiing through the middle section. And I excuse me, but in my best French accent, he goes, "Who knows, man? Maybe I crash. Maybe you win." And I was like, "Thank you for at least acknowledging that you have to crash in order for me to win."
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
freestyle skiing is an extremely difficult sport as far as the judging goes. It goes on
yeah, yeah,
speed, it goes on turns, it goes on jumps.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
A little bit
yeah,
of speed.
my mogul run was a cork seven at the top and a backflip at the bottom, and that's
Awesome.
as good as I got.
Well, for '06, you were ahead of your time.
Yeah, yeah, that was like there's a lot of guys who were running like Matt Bargetts and those guys were running cork sevens in the bumps.
Yeah.
Most guys were doing either a Bronco or like something along those. I skied with Jean-Luc
Yeah,
Brassard at in at Whistler 2016. That was one of my coolest days on skis.
all right. So you went to did the momentum ski camp? Is that it or?
No, it was actually during the winter. Peak Performance is a company out of that. I don't know
Yeah,
where. I
yeah, yeah.
think
They
they're
sponsor Jean-Luc.
yeah. So he was doing like sort of like a ski with an Olympian sort of event thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they were doing some trials of that. And my dad spends a lot of money at Peak Performance. I just happened to be out there, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to ski with Jean-Luc tomorrow?" And I was like,
Mm,
"Yes, yes, I would absolutely love it." And yeah,
mm.
he picked me out immediately. Like my hands were tight together, my feet never
Of
come apart.
course.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, you're a mogul skier." I'm like, "Yeah, like old
You
habits
could,
die hard, man. My feet are glued together at all times. My
and you have a
knees same
straight
way.
body and the knees are going
Oh,
like this,
just
left and right.
yeah, no, it's the
That's pretty
funny.
cool.
Like, I have a pretty funny style when it comes to skiing. Just normally, like I can't shake that style. So I'm sure your
And then
son's similar.
you
I
ski
yeah.
quite a bit. You have a lot of ski area in Manitoba, or you ski out
Uh,
west more?
I try and make it out west 2 or 3 times a
Hmm.
year. I did coach the provincial team for a couple of years.
Okay.
Which yeah, just like once it's no different than motocross. Like once your competing days are done, you gotta stay connected to it somehow. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
coached
yeah.
for a little bit, and yeah, whether it was going out to Quebec for junior nationals or going out west for junior nationals and Canada Winter Games and stuff like that. I just love it. Skiing is
That's
like
awesome.
my second love, and yeah, it's cool to see your son doing so well. Like it's just
Man, he
like
was
he's
gonna.
an extremely good skier and very
Yeah,
strong in his legs. His jumps
he's
are really on point.
he's a
So
little too big though. He's doing really good for his
see, I'm
size.
the same way.
He's,
I'm 6 feet tall, and like every time I'd have a hand come out, like if I'm pole
you could
planting
see
and
it.
they see it all day long. Mikkel's and all of those guys, like even Alexander, like he's small and like they're compact, so that when they make mistakes, it's less you don't see it as much.
Well, Elliot is the heaviest guy on the World Cup tour.
Okay,
He's 6'2", 200, and he's
yeah,
fighting to stay 200. So for him to do a jump on the top air when he flips his tall body, and you have Mikael that's about 5'8",
yeah,
150 pounds. I mean, when he slams through the mogul, he has to have good legs and good core. So it's sort of a challenge. We didn't expect him to be this good, actually, and to be
oh,
this big. But
yeah,
if you see the Canadian mogul team, you'll see Elliot and you'll see everybody else.
everyone else, yeah,
Are these your kids, when they go on
yeah,
tour? So it's pretty funny. But he loves it, and he's doing it now too. So he's still studying though. He's
okay, good,
even in the World Cup, he goes through hotels and travels. He carries his laptop, and he's studying to be a mechanical engineer at college. And the careers are only so long, so you can't put
yep,
all your money. And motocross, you can't do that much money. While in Canada now, I guess you can if you win, but it's always the same top three, four, five. But for
yeah,
him, for skiing, the same thing. He made some money this year, a little bit, but
yeah.
nothing to make a living out of it. So it's all fun. He's going through the next Olympic cycle. It's in 3 years, hoping to make the Olympic. But Olympic is like a bonus, but for him to do good in World Cup is like the main thing for him. Because
Yeah.
you can have a bad day at Olympic, or like this year he had days where he was not even in the final, and Deer Valley was top five. So you can make the good day at the Olympic. And a lot of athletes, when they don't do good Olympics, sort of get discouraged and mentally really hard. I mean, athletes
Yeah, I
from
can imagine.
all sports. So that's the deal with him. Maybe next 2 years, I don't think he's going to get for maybe 3 or 4 more years, and after that, the school finish his school, get his diploma, and on with the next chapter.
Yeah, make some memories along the way. Yeah, like I remember like all the places that we got to go ski and just like the times you spent with your team. I
Yeah,
actually have a really funny story about Jean-Luc, who they had rented a van. I think he said it was in like Czech Republic or something like that. And when they got the van, it was all loaded down, and so the
you want
suspension
to ski
was
here?
compressed. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is when he was skiing. And so when they went to go return the van, they took all their stuff out, and the van no longer fit in underneath the parkade, so it was stuck. And so they said they just left it there. And yeah, that was one of my favorite stories from
If I see
that guy's got
Jean-Luc,
some stories.
if I see Jean-Luc, I will tell him.
Yeah, no, you have to ask him
In
about
Czech
that.
Republic,
That and when he put gas in a diesel.
Oh, well, that too. That's another good one. That's a more of a classic, but the one with
Yeah.
the van that's squatted down with all the weight, that's pretty good. Where you
Yeah,
can't
no, it's
go on the
pretty
top.
funny. Like ski trips for me were always the most fun. Just like 14 or 15 athletes in a van going
Yeah,
across the country. Has he got to ski the Calgary did they do is
no,
Calgary on the World Cup round?
yeah. It was a few years ago. They didn't have it this year, but yes, Calgary's a tough one.
It's steep.
Calgary, it's steep and
I
it
felt
starts.
bad the first year they had the women do it because like the few of the women like got way too hot in the second and like
Well,
they
if you remember the course, it starts with a certain gradient, and
yeah,
then halfway down, when you have a
it
hard time,
dives off.
it dives again. You can't see the end of the course. So that was a pretty gnarly course. Elliot did it a bunch of time, but I never skied that. No way, not me.
No.
I ride my dirt bike, but not skiing. They're hard too. They're a hard icy mogul. That's pretty. I mean, as cool as it is to ski in big, deep, slushy moguls, when they ski those icy hard moguls, like we ski a lot in Quebec, I mean, you can hear the ski and the bam, bam, hard on the knees and the body. I mean, it's tough. If you, ski,
Oh
I'm sure
yeah.
you've seen a bunch of time. Hard moguls, no fun.
Oh yeah, especially like the first mogul that you land on after the jump. Oh, that's where you scrub all your speed off, so it like
Yeah, yeah,
becomes the
yeah.
size of a Volkswagen. And
Oh,
if you happen to
exactly.
crash it, if you crash into one of those things, yeah, you'll be hurting. Do
Yeah.
you ski moguls at all, or you leave that to your kid?
I'm a weekend warrior. I do ski moguls. I'll do like 5, 10 moguls, and then get offline. But I did ski Apex a few years ago, like the course in Apex.
Yeah,
You know the
Penticton.
course.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Elliot was there for training. I went with him, and I did the first jump, and a straight, just a straight jump to try to hit like the first few mogul. But I did first one. I slowed down like too much, like the
yeah.
little kids
Scr
do. And then I
Scrub
did
all
like
your speed.
5, 6 mogul, but it starts going too fast. I maybe did 10 and then boom out. So you can really appreciate what they do when you ski a course. But no, I ski a weekend warrior. I mean, I don't ski that good. I ski fast, but I don't ski that technical like Elliot.
Fair
Not
enough.
really.
Well, you sound a lot like my dad's 66 years old, and when he watches me ski, he kind of just shakes his head and he's like, I don't know what you like. I don't know how you guys do that. I'm like, well, you gave me the opportunity to learn how to do what this is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
I do use Elliot ski and I try to imitate him. I'll do maybe 3, 4 moguls, but I always open my knees, so I don't ski like you guys. Forget it.
yeah,
It's good
yeah,
because for the rest of your life, when you do on a trip or whatever, you travel all over the world, wherever you're gonna go. When you know how to ski,
yeah.
when you can mogul ski, you can ski anywhere. I mean,
Anywhere.
as good as the alpine skiers are, mogul skiers, all around skier, you can ski everywhere. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I thank my dad for it every year. That I got to ski with Jean-Luc, and I it was not planned whatsoever. And I stayed on that guy the tails of his skis all day long, and it's because dad put up the cash to be able to send me off to the mountains. But
Cool.
Carl, this was so much fun, man.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
I could
Finish
do this
it.
for another hour or so, but and we should catch up another time sometime soon. But yeah, this was good. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for making me episode 1. That's pretty cool.